To empower in a leadership sense then means that you go an extra mile, not only to train and equip those that are around you, but you go even a step further and you believe in them. And I think sometimes that's where we sometimes either get it wrong or get it right. Hey, welcome again to the Amisi Leadership Podcast, where we are so passionate about leadership. We equip people with high capacity tools to drive societal transformation. We believe that everything rises or falls on leadership. And if we can get our leadership act together, then we'll sort out so many of the problems that are happening around us in our communities, in our nations, in organizations. We've been talking about the subject of empowering. We told you last week that the health of any effective leader is to empower. You've got to be a leader who empowers those that are around. And we gave you a difference between a leader who's raising followers and a leader who's raising leaders. You see, a leader who's raising followers can equip, can train, but doesn't empower people, doesn't give them power. And I'll be giving you our simple definition of an empowering leader. But a leader who's raising leaders goes an extra mile and gives them the power to do. We talked about a simple definition of an empowering leader. This is what we said. Empowering is simply enabling others to make decisions and take actions. You give them the authority, of course, delegated authority to make decisions and to take action. We said to empower simply means to give power or authority. To give power or authority. And I told you the image that I like using in this lesson is that of a parent who gives birth to a kid, raises that kid as a child, then as a teenager, takes them to school, to college, university, then releases them to thrive in society. You don't do that and you keep on holding them around yourself. You release them to thrive. We said to empower in a leadership sense then means that you go an extra mile, not only to train and equip those that are around you, but to go even a step further and you believe in them. And I think sometimes that's where we sometimes either get it wrong or get it right. That many of us can train, many of us don't have a problem in equipping, but many times we have an issue with believing those that are around us, believing them with some responsibility, giving them some authority to execute. We are always second-guessing ourselves, wondering, will they do it right? Will things work out? An empowering leader creates a high-trust environment. An empowering leader goes an extra mile and says, I will believe in those that are around me, those that I'm developing, to be able to execute that which I've trained them. Will they get it wrong sometimes? Yes, you bet. But then an empowering leader knows that failure is not fatal. That even when those around me, the people that I'm developing, fail, I have an opportunity to call them back and ask them, can we start interrogating our failures and pick the lessons that we're learning from such failures? In other words, you can make failure to be an asset in terms of developing those that are around you. And you do that by creating a high trust environment. Last week, we told you that there are three musts for any empowering leader. Three principles that are must-have for any empowering leader. We told you the first one is the principle of discernment, whereby as a leader, you've got to be like a scout. You're able to see potential even before others see that potential. That around the people that you're developing, you can be able to pick out potential when it's still raw and embark on developing that potential. The second principle that we said is a must-have for any empowering leader is the principle of development. Principle of development. You've learned to be interested and to be committed to the growth path of your people. You train them, you expose them, you give them a platform, you build their capacity. And any leader, be it in the corporate space, in the church space, in the political arena, if the people who are working around you don't get opportunities to be developed, for their capacity to be built, then you can't count yourself as an empowering leader. In fact, I normally say, make sure if there are opportunities to train people, give to everyone, from the highest to the lowest. You want to make sure that you have people around you who are trained, doing well, than have people who've never been trained and they're not able to execute the vision that you have. The principle of development is a must-have. And then we told you the third one was the principle of deployment. Once you've designed the gifting, the skill, the raw potential, then you start to develop it, to sharpen it, to smoothen it. You don't stop there. You create a platform and you set them on the stage. What are you doing? You are deploying them. And that's where trust is needed. That's where believing is needed. You're deploying them. You're telling them, I will go a step further. Use my networks. Use all that I have to make sure that that which you've learned, I've created a stage for you to be able to practice so that you can become the best version of yourself. You do that, you help people believe in themselves. So you've moved from a point where you're just the only one who's believing in them, but when you deploy them, they gain confidence and they start believing in themselves. There are so many upcoming leaders who are looking for somebody who can help them start believing in themselves. And all you need to do is to design, to develop, and then deploy them. Design, develop, and deploy them. And today, I want us to briefly look at how do we do this empowering. I want us to look at the how of empowering. What are some of the things, if you start doing them, you will know that you're effectively empowering the people around you. In fact, we'll share. There are two things in this lesson. I'll share one today, and then I'll share the next in our next week's podcast. The first one, for you to know that you're an empowering leader, you've got to start making sure that these two critical steps are part of your leadership development plan. Number one is time. Time. T-I-M-E. Time. You get to learn to spend time with those that you're developing. No empowering leader can assume I'm empowering and you don't give people access. You don't spend time with those that you're developing. Here, listen to what I've written in my notes here. Spending time here does not mean a passive act where you only afford them presence and proximity. It is an active process that affords them proximity. Listen, it is not just a passive act of just affording them presence and proximity. No, it is an active process. They are involved in all that you're doing that affords them proximity. And then there are three things that should happen if you're to effectively spend time with those that you're developing. Three things that need to happen. One is that when you're spending time with those that you're developing, they should be able to interrogate your blind spots. They should be able to interrogate your blind spots. Listen, you get to a point where you realize you can have a frank discussion with those that you're developing about your hits and your misses as your leader. In other words, what I'm driving at is that you learn to be vulnerable with those that you're developing. You see, you can't develop people if what you and I always project is perfection. We are always successful. You and I know no leader can project perfection. We've all failed at one point in time. There are times we've gotten it right. There are times we've missed it. So you've got to get to a point whereby you're affording them time to interrogate your blind spot, to learn from your blind spot. And you're vulnerable. You're vulnerable about some of those blind spots. They're able to interrogate you, not just your misses, but even your hits where you've been successful. You can tell them, I've been successful in this area, and these are some of the things that I've done for me to be successful. An empowering leader spends time. You will know you're successful in empowering people if there's time spent. And for you to make sure that you're making the best out of that time spent, allow them to interrogate your blind spots, your hits, and your misses. Number two, you should be able to afford them an opportunity to strategize for vision. To strategize for vision. And simply what we're saying is that you afford them the space and opportunity to speak into the vision and also interrogate the methods of delivering that vision. You've shared a vision with them. Is there room for them to speak into it, to even contribute as far as the delivering of that vision is concerned? Or are you just shoving it down their throat and saying you've got to implement it in total? An empowering leader needs to differentiate between two critical things in developing leaders. One is what I call creative expression, and the other one is what I call rebellion. Rebellion is where somebody comes and says, no, I'm questioning your vision. We can't do it. It won't work, sabotaging it, and being so negative about the vision that you're sharing out as a leader. Now, that's rebellion. That should not be allowed. That needs to be dealt with. But then you have those who come and say, this is the vision. We're excited about this vision. Would you consider us using this method and that method to help deliver your good vision? That is called creative expression. And that should be encouraged. It should be encouraged. And that's really strategizing for the vision. You're allowing them space and opportunity to speak into that vision. That's what an empowering leader does. That you have an opportunity, you've opened that opportunity for people, that they can also speak into the vision that you have as a leader. The last thing on that score is transferring values. Transferring values. It's so key that as you're empowering people, you've got to start transferring values to these people. You model the kind of attitude you'd want to see in your organization. You see, as a leader, you can't just teach values. You've got to model values. Many of us sometimes want to teach values. Do this, don't do this. No. An effective leader, an empowering leader learns, I can't just teach them. I've got to model the values that I'm teaching. In other words, I've got to be what I am teaching, either in private or in public. And in fact, when you're transferring values, the people you're developing are able to see you because they have an active access to you. They have an active, they've gained that not just presence and proximity in a passive way, but actively. They're able to see you operate under pressure. They're able to see you make decisions when things are working and even when things are not working. They're able to see you when you're handling failure, even in the organization. They're able to see you handle success, how you interact with other people. As they see that, you're modeling values to them, either your values or the values of the organization. Listen to me, folks. If you're going to be an effective leader, you've got to be an empowering leader. And you can't be an empowering leader unless you've learned to spend time with those that you're developing. We've learned today, for that time to be effective, for that time to be beneficial, 3 things must happen. The people you're developing must have an opportunity to interrogate your blind spots. They can interrogate your hits and your misses, your failures and your success in your leadership journey. They can be able to strategize for vision. They have an opportunity to speak into that vision. Be able to even come up with methods to improve on the methods that you have in the delivery of the vision. And then you're able to transfer values to them. When they see you work, operate, sometimes in difficult circumstances, they pick more lessons than the lessons you teach in a class. They see you act under pressure, operate under pressure. They see you handle success. As you do that, you're setting them up for success. You are empowering them. Empowering leaders are healthy because the health of any effective leader is to empower those that are around you. Are there people that you're empowering? Do you know their names? If you are to be asked, what are the 2, 3, 4, 5 people that you spend most time with because you want them developed and empowered in their leadership journey? Would you be able to write those names down? You that is leading an organization, you're a CEO, you're a mid-level manager, you're a senior manager, you're a pastor of a church, you're leading an NGO. Are you empowering those that are around you? Are you giving them authority? Are you giving them the power to execute the things that they've learned? Or are you hoarding everything to yourself? You will not be effective unless you start to empower, because great leaders who are great leader makers intentionally empower those that are around you. See you next week when we continue with this conversation on an empowering leader. I've said that in the past and I'll say it today. If you want to listen and learn the things that I'm teaching in greater detail, go to Amazon and get my new book, Seed It Out, How Great Leaders Become Great Leader Makers. And when you do that, you'll be putting in your hands a tool that will make you effective in your leadership journey. And if you like this teaching, I'll kindly ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast. I want you to subscribe and share it with your friends. Tell us where you're watching us from. If you have any question, write it in the chat. We'll be able to respond to those questions in our next podcast. Otherwise, see you next week as you continue to become great leaders who are making other great leaders. Thank you so much for joining us. See you next week.